Donald's platform in the 2024 presidential election had essentially two planks: transphobia and the promise to bring jobs back to America. Not only has disastrous economy done the exact opposite, but since returning to office, he's taken cruel pleasure in firing government workers, his own employees, so to speak. Sometimes he fires anyone who disagrees with him. At other times, he fires people just to appear like a tough guy. But in reality, he doesn't do this because he's powerful. He does it because he's afraid. Let's take a look at some of the more frivolous firings that have taken place during the Trump regime. Donald and Office of Management Budget Director Russ Vought have repeatedly threatened mass layoffs during this government shutdown. Why? Well, to punish Democrats, of course. They've reportedly planned to let go up to 16,000 federal workers. This would be on top of the roughly 300,000 people already laid off by Donald's DOGE cuts this year. Here's what White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had to say about these impending job losses.
Look, it's likely going to be in the thousands. It's a very good question, and that's something that the Office of Management and Budget and the entire team at the White House here, again, is unfortunately having to work on today. These discussions and these conversations, these meetings would not be happening if the Democrats had voted to keep the government open.
By the way, there was no vote to keep the government open. There was a vote on a budget. And because that didn't pass, the government shut down. And it didn't pass because it was a Republican bill that gave absolutely no concessions to Democrats, who basically were simply asking that Affordable Care Act subsidies be extended so that millions of people didn't lose their health insurance and millions more didn't have their premiums go up. Republicans said no. Democrats could not vote for a bill that egregiously harmful to their voters. So here we are. Donald's Republican sycophants have voiced opposition to the plan to cut thousands of federal jobs behind the scenes, of course. CNN reports that GOP lawmakers, including Speaker Mike Johnson and Senators Kevin Cramer, Susan Collins, and John Thune, have expressed unease with these planned firings. They worry, as they should, that purging workers during the shutdown is a bad look and may potentially cost them in the midterms. You see, they don't care that people might lose their jobs. They just care that it might force them to lose their own power. These Republicans also fear that using the shutdown as an excuse to cancel so-called Democrat agencies, it's Democratic, grow up, and other blue state programs will also alienate swing states in 2026. They point to the wide unpopularity of the Department of Government Efficiency as a precedent for this concern. And it's true. Outside of the shutdown, Donald has been canceling tens of billions of dollars in funding that had already been allocated to things such as infrastructure projects in New York. Two of the largest infrastructure projects in the country have once again been suspended as retaliation against Democrats like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries that Donald doesn't like. So instead of spending money to upgrade systems that will make all New Yorkers' lives better, including Republicans who voted for Donald, he is canceling the funding altogether. Another of Donald's firings is straight out of medieval times. The New York Times reports that in another arbitrary and bizarre move, Donald pressured the resignation of Todd Arrington, director of the Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum. This came after Arrington had the audacity to refuse to give Donald one of Eisenhower's sword for Donald to present to King Charles as a gift on his trip to England. Arrington was right to decline to release the sword, and Donald was forced to present a replica instead. Is that a big deal? Arrington was doing his job. Well, doesn't matter to Donald. He threw a temper tantrum and fired the director because that is the kind of person who is in the Oval Office. But before we go on, we cannot allow Donald to turn our government into a loyalty club for sycophants. So please, like and share this video. And if you believe in the mission of Mary Trump Media, subscribe to our channel. Former FBI Director James Comey, as we know, is being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia. That case is not going well for the government, which is a good thing, quite frankly, but the reason is a bad one. The Washington Post reports that since Comey's indictment, A handful of firings have swept through that office. Many see the terminations as a politically motivated purge, and I think that that's an accurate assessment of what's going on. Recently, two senior prosecutors, Maya Song and Michael B. Benare, have been dismissed. Another prosecutor, Troy A. Edwards Jr., resigned after Comey's indictment. Edwards just happens to be Comey's son in law. This upheaval follows the appointment of Lindsay Halligan as interim U.S. attorney. She is a former aide of Donald's and had once been one of his many, many, many defense attorneys who has zero prosecutorial experience and is now overseeing an agency that has over 300 prosecutors, which is a slap in the face to all of them. Halligan indicted Comey after a couple of days on the job, despite objections from career lawyers who believed the evidence was far too weak for prosecution. And that's what weak leaders do. They gin up prosecutions against their perceived political enemies to make themselves look tougher, while all the while just demonstrating how pathetic they really are. Too pathetic to stand up to any opposition whatsoever, even if the perceived political enemy we're talking about is not in opposition to them at all. When is the last time you heard James Comey's name mentioned? So Donald's loyalists are running government agencies and they are following Donald's leads. MSNBC has the latest on recent firings at the FBI. Take a look at this.
Now to the latest round in Kash Patel's remaking of the FBI. Patel has fired an agent in training for having a gay pride flag on his desk last year, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. And news of that firing sparked some agents in the Washington field office to scour their desks and social media accounts for anything that could be viewed as offensive to President Trump.
Anybody who finds a little rainbow flag offensive shouldn't be in charge of anything. And he certainly shouldn't be the leader of the American people. By the way, also, it is illegal to fire somebody for having a rainbow flag on their desk. But, of course, this homophobic regime doesn't care about such things. Hopefully, more people start to. Meanwhile, the New York Times reports that over at the National Institutes of Health, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy fired Dr. Gene Marazzo. Marazzo, former director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, had filed a whistleblower complaint. This complaint alleged that officials in the Trump regime defied court orders, undermined vaccine research, and endangered research subjects. Marazzo's firing, along with those of 3 other NIH Institute directors, comes as part of a larger campaign, the purpose of which is to purge government scientists and researchers who raise concerns about the Trump regime's policies. In this specific instance, to raise concerns about the dangerous policies of their sociopathic boss, Robert Kennedy, who apparently doesn't believe in science and continues to purport falsely that vaccines, safe, readily available vaccines, cause autism. Meanwhile, measles and whooping cough are making a comeback. And I'm pretty sure polio and smallpox are not far behind. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.